So today's the day. I'm excited because we have our first worship leader highlight. I'm excited because he's actually on his way right now. Here he comes. I think you ran into the bush.
Drove into a tree. Just committed. Long time no see.
How's it going?
Good.
I literally just pulled up and I just turned it on and told him how excited I was.
Oh man.
That today is first worship leader highlight. Woo. We need to go get some coffee. Here we go.
Let's sing a whole new line.
Yeah. Wait.
They also do free espresso shots on Friday.
What's up? This is Chris Garnett.
Yeah.
So, what'd you say, breakfast? Gonna head back to the office? We're gonna talk about what it's like to be in this guy's shoes. Here's the office. What's up, guys? How's it going? Hey, worship leader. My name is Jimmy Cooper. Welcome back to the channel. Today I have with me
Chris Garnett.
Chris Garnett. So Chris, thank you for joining us today. This is the Hey Worship Leader highlight. Tell the Hey Worship Leader community who you are and where you serve right now.
So I'm Chris, as Jimmy said. I serve at a church called Redemption Church in Wilson, North Carolina. I serve as the worship leader and right now the pastoral assistant.
So how long have you been at Redemption? Redemption, I'm gonna cut him off a million times in this video. I apologize in advance. But I always forget the name of your church because there's so many churches that start with R.
There are, and Dwayne often calls those churches out at the Pillar Conference.
Does he?
Who here is at a church whose name starts with an R, and at least half of the people there's names go up.
Redemption, Restoration, Redeemer.
Yep. Redemption Hill in Boston.
Okay.
I think there are actually multiple Redemption/Redemption Hill themed
Redemption
names.
is a good theme.
It is.
I'm definitely a fan. I love it. My good friend Chris Garnett leads it. Recoil Church, Redemption, Relent Church, Restoration. I don't know. Some church. So how long have you been at Redemption?
A little over a year. I got officially hired October of 2018, but I started serving and helping out with leading worship there in August of 2018. So it's been just over a year.
This is a question from me to you. Do you like it when I say, hey, he was a resident?
Yeah, I mean, that was a big part of a lot that I learned as a worship leader and helped kind of get me to where I am today. So I tell people that I served as a resident intern at Open Door.
Because I was thinking about this later because I usually introduce you as, oh, he was a resident because I'm proud of it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
First resident that I had at Open Door is now full-time at a church plant doing amazing things. But I also didn't know if the way I was saying it was making you never not be a resident. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He's not a resident anymmer. He's doing the main thing.
Yeah.
So
I dig it.
So Chris was a resident of mine at Open Door. My first not Summerlink.
I did do Summerlink.
He did do Summerlink, but my first Generation Link intern. And what is Generation Link?
So I was told it's like a resident, and usually it's typically called a year-long resident internship to serve alongside church staff, working in areas of ministry that you want to get plugged into, maybe have the desires to be on staff at a church. And it's a good way to just kind of have a healthy, safe environment to get your feet wet in ministry and take on some responsibilities, be critiqued, be discipled and taught just how to serve the local church.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a more official way to phrase it, but
that sounded awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's exactly what we did. And what were some of the responsibilities? Do you remember today?
I wrote a lot of chord charts.
Chord charts. I hate doing chord charts. I have a Generation Link resident now.
Yeah.
And one of her main projects is chord charts. So Chris, Redemption Hill. Redemption Hill is not your church. So Chris, Redemption Church is a church plant, as you mentioned. Explain what that's like. You guys are a mobile site.
Yeah. So we meet in a school in Wilson, North Carolina. We've got a trailer that houses all of our gear. Sunday morning, we actually set up at 8. I know most.
That's great.
Yeah, it's awesome. Most church plants that I know of are setting up at like 6:30 or earlier.
So walk us through what it looks like when you do set up. So the trailer door.
Yeah, just like that.
But what do you have? What does it look like?
We've got like these 3 carts that kind of house our more collective pieces of gear. So we've got a cart for all of our sound equipment, a welcome table, and then we've got a resource table, then we've got like road flags so people know that we're there and that we're meeting.
So as far as worship gear, you set up some speakers.
We've got 2 JBL speakers, got an audio snake that we set up on stage to plug up, and then we run it back to our sound booth. It's a table with our soundboard on it.
Do you know what kind of soundboard you have?
Currently, so our main board is a PreSonus. It's like a 16.2.4, something like that. It's a smaller 16 channel.
16 channel.
But a couple weeks ago, some kind of electrical short happened. Middle of the service, and so that was fun to deal with and figure out. So I got that sent off to PreSonus. They're working on it, and so right now we are running a Mackie analog board.
So tell us about what it normally looks like as far as instruments. What instruments are played? What kind? What do you have going on stage each weekend?
Yeah, so typical setup is myself singing, playing the acoustic guitar. I have another vocalist with me. We recently, I think June or July, we started incorporating a bass player and a cajon player, and so that's our typical setup.
No keyboard right now?
No keyboard right now, so that's it. That's it.
And you like to play electric or acoustic more?
Depends on the season. I enjoy playing both. Right now, I'm playing more acoustic, so I'm like missing playing the electric more.
But you want a big old half-stack amp on stage. So Chris, you mentioned that Redemption is a church plant, and I've been a part of a church plant before, and I know that being part of a plant versus being a part of a church that has a permanent facility, it comes with its own hurdles. Can you speak to the hurdles that you've experienced and maybe some wisdom for those who are also either about to jump into a church plant that is in a temporary rented space? Can you speak to that? Like, what is it like?
I mean, it comes with, like you said, its own hurdles. If we're honest, some frustrations just because we don't have a place to really call our home. It's not frustrating, but sometimes it's inconvenient maybe to do setup stuff. Sometimes you can't always guarantee that everything is just going to go smooth.
So some of the hurdles that I experienced at being a part of a church that has a permanent location is that my morning routine, I spend a lot of time just trying to get my mind right. Trying to think about the importance of what's going to happen that day and thinking through the service again. We've already rehearsed on Wednesday, but it's been several days. I usually spend the night before thinking through again, but then it's like Sunday morning, your brain tends to go every which direction. And I can only imagine that a big part of the hurdles for a church plant is when things go wrong, or you're sitting there doing manual labor, like unloading these trailers with big heavy boxes.
Carts, boxes,
carts,
things,
cases. It's difficult maybe to get your mind right for leading worship and thinking about the importance of what's going on that day, and then think about leading your team, because sometimes it's stressful. I know that things go wrong last minute. You're trying to get stuff plugged in, and the next thing you know, the doors are open and people are coming in, and maybe you didn't have very long sound check at the beginning, and so those are some hurdles.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk about some tips, maybe for someone viewing this video that is about to go out on a church plant or has recently started, or maybe has been a part of a church plant that is feeling some of these hurdles and doesn't know how to move on. What are some tips that you can think of? Maybe we can both speak into this, that someone can feel encouraged.
So one of the things I had to remind myself kind of early off is that I don't need to try and make this church plant exactly like the established church that I was coming from. And we've talked about just like the need for stuff, for equipment, to have the cool lights, the nice speakers. I just kind of had to remind myself is that different churches have different DNAs. They may be very like-minded, kind of their methodology and their theology and doctrine, but different people
different budgets.
Different budgets, yeah, for sure. Like I can't come in and just like try and get the same sound system that Open Door has.
And so that's a good word, because when I was first part of a church plant, honestly, I was thrown into the position. I was not equipped well. I did not have an internship. Wasn't able to shadow another worship leader. One of my biggest regrets is that when we started, I was just concerned about the sound system and the lights and trying to make it look like what I thought the church plant should look like. And I lost my vision and my focus on what was supposed to be happening on a Sunday morning, keeping the main thing. In what ways have you maybe changed over the past year, or what would you tell someone that's struggling with the need to, because you have to buy stuff.
Yeah.
You do have to think about these things. We're not saying that you don't think about these things, but you have to put them in priority.
Yeah.
What would you say, like, to someone who is struggling with keeping the main thing?
I would say remind yourself what the main focus is. Ultimately, it's leading God's people in worship. Put the focus on Jesus. Ultimately, that's why we're there. And that's sometimes something I just have to remind myself. Like, it's not about if the sound system works. It's not about if my guitar battery dies or not. Ultimately, like, if we're just worshiping Jesus and we're not distracted by anything, then in a sense, we're succeeding. I would also say, like, just develop a good go with the flow attitude and mentality, because as we've addressed, like, things are gonna go wrong. Something technologically is gonna go wrong at some point, whether it's during a sound check or during a service. Just make sure people aren't distracted so that they can keep worshiping.
That's awesome. So in a culture where we have Instagram and Facebook and you're able to see a lot of what other churches are doing. So explain to me, like, being a church plant, seeing what other churches are doing and struggling maybe with the comparing aspect of what other churches are doing versus what you are capable of doing.
I think really just being a good steward with what you have and utilizing what you currently have to the full extent. Really just seeing what you have and using it well.
Just because someone else has done something doesn't mean that's what God has for you and what you should be doing. Utilizing what you have is a good principle to remember, but we're not saying that you don't set goals.
Yeah.
So I think another tip would be to think about what you actually need, not what someone else has or because someone else has it or it's the next new piece of gear, but think about what you actually need and then set a goal and make sure it's obtainable and go work for it. I want to do a new segment called Quick Questions. Are you ready for some quick questions?
Speed round.
I'm gonna ask him some questions and he's gonna answer them quickly. Quick questions with Jimmy and Chris. Darn it. Favorite city, not the one you live in.
I've never been there, but my wife and I really want to go to Bend, Oregon.
Bend?
Yeah, it's in the mountains of Oregon.
Like Bend?
Yeah, like Bend. I don't know.
Next question. Last song you had on repeat.
Been listening to Is He Worthy by Andrew Peterson a lot. We're introducing that song as our new song for September. So I want
nice.
There's a lot of people in our church that really like Andrew Peterson. Okay. So there's like some pressure to do it well and not botch it. So,
and we're gonna introduce that in December.
Okay.
I said that weird. In December, and I am a little worried about, because it's different. It's like a call and response, which I think is awesome to do in congregational worship. It just teaches that, we need participation. But I'm scared, so I'm gonna do it with a choir, so that the choir can lead in that at least the first time.
I don't have a choir, so I'm hoping my congregation is my choir.
I'll be excited to follow up with you and see how it goes, because you're doing it before we do it.
Yeah, we're doing it this Sunday.
Next quick question.
So
you just said you're about to teach Is He Worthy to your church. What is the last song you taught your church?
May the Peoples Praise You by the Gettys.
Next question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of a driver are you?
I would say I'm a great driver.
I don't know if it's going to make it into the video, but I have video evidence of you driving into a bush. I think you ran into the bush this morning.
When I'm on the road, I'm a great driver.
Favorite junk food?
Doritos.
A book every worship leader should read?
Rhythms of Grace by Mike Cosper. Worship Matters by Bob Coughlin. But The Worship Pastor by Zach Hicks.
How many cups of coffee do you drink a day?
The most I'll drink is 2.
Next question. If you could tell your younger worship leader self something, what would you tell young Chris Garnett?
I would say, like, look to other worship leaders and learn from them. Most beneficial thing in my career as a worship leader is probably the internship I did with you.
Yeah.
And just being able to sit under an older worship leader that has more experience, that can look at what I do and tell me what's good, what's bad, what needs to be worked on, what should I never do again. So I would say, man, just learn from other worship leaders.
That's a good word, because being able to be like a mentor for someone also challenges the mentor. Pouring into someone intentionally is good for that person, but it's also good for the one doing the pouring into, because it's both ways. You know.
Yeah.
Quick questions is over. So summarize quickly for us what we've covered today.
Don't compare. Do the best with what God's given you. Always be flexible, because things aren't going to go according to plan. And remember, you're there to lead God's people in worship.
So that's it.
That's it.
That pretty much sums it up. I thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for
Always
being
a pleasure.
part of this worship leader highlight, our first one. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up in one of the buttons down here. Which side is it on? And then there's a big red button that says subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to the channel. And if you will, hit the little bell. It's the notification bell. That way you can stay up to date on the latest content that Hey Worship Leader is putting out. If you'd like to follow us on social media, we have a Facebook page and an Instagram with the tag Hey Worship Leader. Follow us there to get announcements on things that are coming up in the future and to let you know when a video goes live. This has been fun. All right, getting a little more serious. A little more serious while we laugh.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So getting a little more serious, what would you tell your younger self if you could?
Tell it what? Just...
Oh.